Hi everyone. This is going to be a little different than normal. This is actually mostly a public announcement. And it's more of a I have had an epiphany and I wanted to share it with you guys. I posted this on Facebook, and a lot of you aren't friends with me on Facebook, so I thought that I would make it on a media that can be shared across the internet without discrimination. So I had an epiphany, and let me just, it's about breastfeeding. And I am not a mom. I am not breastfeeding. I have no children. But one day, when I decide to have my children, I would like to be able to have the liberty of breastfeeding my child without discrimination. There are laws against it, saying that. No, I don't mean like laws against breastfeeding. I mean laws against discriminating against breastfeeding. And yet people still discriminate against breastfeeding like there's no laws at all. So, I wanted to dissect the argument that it is disgusting. So, I gave it a little bit of thought. I did a little bit of research. Didn't need to do that much research because I already know, and you already know, that the breast itself, the boob, is an over-sexualized object. And what I mean by that is that the media will use the breast or, the feminine figure over sexually. And what I mean by that is that they will sell everything from lingerie at Victoria's Secret to hamburgers at fast food restaurants and cars at, of course, car dealerships. So the breast has become over sexualized. It is ingrained in your mind. You are desensitized to the fact that the breast is a sexual object. That being said, the breast is not just a sexual object. Since it is not considered genitals, the breast is actually a fetish item. So what that means is that if you sexualize a different part of the body that is not genitalia, which the breasts are not, that is called a fetish. So if a person finds the boobs appealing, that means that they are fetishizing the boobs. So over-sexualizing the breast, that's taken care of. Everyone knows that that's a thing. Everyone knows that they're desensitized to boobs being on everything from lingerie to hamburgers. We know that. So the problem is, why do people find breasts disgusting when they're being used for their God-given function? For their genetic makeup. I mean, we're not the only mammals who feed their child by breast. We're not the only species on the planet who feed their children through a nipple. We're not unique in that at all. And yet people don't find it disgusting when kittens breastfeed, or when dogs breastfeed, or when hippos and lions, and I mean, it's just like you don't think of it as a breast, and that's because we haven't over sexualized them. So the whole point that I'm getting at is that the breast is so over sexualized. People in general, I've seen both men and women, children, teenagers, older people, I've seen everyone do this. They have it in their minds that breastfeeding is a sexual act. They think they've only seen breasts being sexualized within our generations, past couple generations, because this wasn't a thing for the longest time. There's, I think it was the 1900s painting where it had it was of the Salem witch trials, and there was a painting of it where the teenage girls were freaking out because they were possessed and they were witches. And then in the audience, in the pews, you can actually see a woman breastfeeding. She's covered head to toe in the garments of that day and age's style, but her boob is out and she is feeding her child. And no one is batting an eye. No one is looking at her, no one is paying attention to her, and that is because in the most recent years we have over-sexualized the breast to the point that people, when they think of the breast, they think of a sexual object. And when they think of a sexual object, they think of only sexualized things happening to it. Another reason why people think unrelated, people think that periods are so disgusting, not only for the blood, but because it's a genitalia. And what's happening to the genitalia, even though it is natural, they think that it's gross. I mean, it is kind of gross because it gets messy, but that's besides the point. The whole argument that I'm trying to say is that breastfeeding, even though it is a natural thing, even though it is supposed to happen, even though it happens around us every single day, with other animals and with other human beings, we automatically think of it as a sexual act. We think of breastfeeding. We think of someone sucking on a boob as a sexual act. And that is why people think it's disgusting. They think that the baby is performing some sort of sexual act. And that is why people think it's disgusting and why it shouldn't be in public. Why it should be, hidden, why it's not moral. That's why they think that it's a private thing, because they're over-sexualizing it subconsciously, because they don't even realize it. But they are over-sexualizing it to the point that they think that breastfeeding, that feeding a child, is disgusting. Now, if the boob was just out, if it was just there, they would not think of it as a sexual act. They would not feel that it is disgusting. They would be, uncomfortable because the boob's out. But that's why they think that cleavage is fine. That's why they think that underwear is fine. That, even just nipple tassels are okay. Because the nipple itself has been over-sexualized to the point that people cannot think of it without it being sexualized. If that makes sense. I've said over-sexualized so many times that it just rolls right off the tongue. So, in conclusion, too long didn't read. The boob is so over-sexualized that breastfeeding itself has become a sexual act to people who do not know better. And the best way to get rid of this stigma is to just breastfeed your child in public. Breastfeed them as much as they need to be breastfed, and explain to the person that they are a victim themselves to the mass media. They are a victim of over-sexualization of the breast, and therefore they think that a natural performance of feeding a little soul, a little infant that half of them are arguing are live since creation after sex, that they need to be fed. Those little tiny things, those little things that will one day rule the world, those little things need to be fed with a boob. And that's all there is to it. And if you can't stand the idea of eating in a public restroom, why should they have to? And I could go on a whole different tangent. I already started it, but I'm just going to stop it right there. And I'm going to say, just breastfeed your child where they need to be breastfed. And if you find breastfeeding disgusting, look at yourself. Look at yourself good and hard and realize why. Why is breastfeeding so disgusting? Is it because you're a victim of the media and you are a victim of the over-sexualization of the breast? Or is it because that, I don't know, you think that breast milk is gross? I mean, you breastfed at one point in time, so why shouldn't that child? And I think that we are, we need to move on from this. We need to grow up as a society and pull us up from our bootstraps, or boob straps, so that we can, move on to more important things. Breastfeeding is not disgusting. Final line. Breastfeeding is not gross. And you need to educate yourself if you think it is.